In a rural region of the United States, a couple of farmers wake up to strange sounds coming from the forest, and believing that coyotes may be attacking their animals, they set out to confront the predators. Outside, the residents run to the source of the noises together with their dog Spike, and come across the body of one of the animals, which has been partially devoured by a creature. Analyzing the bite marks, Billy says that it doesn't seem to have been done by an ordinary predator, and during the investigation, the little dog runs off into the forest. Soon after, the couple hears their dog being attacked by something, and noticing that the creature is approaching, they run back to their house. After a few seconds, Billy notices that the creature seems to have gone, and goes outside to check, whereupon he comes across large footprints scattered across the ground. Away from there, Preston travels through the mountains towards the town of Flatwoods, where he will spend a few days in his old country house, where he used to live next to his wife, who perished after a climbing accident. Even though they're halfway there, the climber says he doesn't want to do that, and that he's not ready to relive the terrible events of his past. Upon hearing this, Otis, the nurse responsible for Preston's safety, tells him that he will be in charge for the next few days, and asks the man to behave while they're traveling together. The caregiver also says that he has always made good decisions to help him recover from his traumas, so he must follow his recommendations so that everything goes smoothly. When they arrive in town, the driver decides to stop at one of the gas stations, and as he approaches the cashier, he runs into Clerk, who is impressed by Preston's return. The attendant says that the climber's late wife seemed to be a good person, and reveals that at the time of the accident, there were rumors that she didn't even lose her life in the fall, but rather from a heart attack in midair. Clerk then points to the exact spot where the woman fell, saying that everyone has stopped going there since. After filling up, Otis leaves the gas station with Preston, and the attendant goes back to reading his newspaper, where he is told about the attack by the abominable creature. Hours later, the pair arrived at the country house where the man had stayed with his wife, and after preparing the wheelchair, Otis helped his friend with the luggage. Observing the famous mountain, Preston begins to have memories of his past, but is quickly interrupted by his caretaker, who takes him inside the hut. Realizing that he has forgotten to buy one of Preston's meals, Otis says he will return to town and asks his patient to wait for a while. Upon hearing this, the man admits that he doesn't want to be alone in that place, but the caretaker tells him that he won't be long and leaves. Minutes later, the retired climber begins to feel a tremor, as if something giant were approaching, and goes out onto the balcony to figure out what's going on. Preston then discovers that a group of young university students have come to stay in the cottage next door, just during their vacation. In the evening, the climber starts looking for something to eat, but all the food seems to be expired, so he gives up on preparing his dinner. Soon afterwards, the man notices that Otis is extremely late, and goes to the window to check that he is already on his way back. Looking into the forest with his binoculars, Preston sees the wreckage of an electric pole, which seems to have been destroyed by something. Realizing that something might be wrong, the climber decides to check on the whereabouts of the young women in the hut, who gather outside after hearing the loud crash of the destroyed pole. At the same time, Karen begins to move away from the place while trying to call her boyfriend, saying that the phone in the cabin has stopped working and that the cell phone signal is getting weaker and weaker. After walking along the road for a few minutes, the young woman finally manages to get a signal, and takes the opportunity to talk to her boyfriend. At that moment, Preston interrupts his investigation to clean the binoculars, but at the same time, the university student ends up being captured by a creature, which manages to escape unnoticed by the man. Believing that he may be going mad, the climber decides to take his flashlight to check the surroundings of the forest, and when he arrives outside, he notices a strange movement among the trees. Seconds later, Preston comes across the face of a frightening creature watching the hut, and goes into a state of despair, trying to get away in his wheelchair without being noticed. Immediately afterwards, the man starts turning off all the lights, and rushes to send a distress email to the authorities. However, Preston is surprised by the sudden arrival of Otis, who turns off the computer and asks his patient to calm down immediately. Panicked, he tells him about the young girl who has been captured, but the caretaker refuses to believe his story and says he will investigate the hut if the girl doesn't turn up in the next few hours. Realizing that he will have no chance of escaping the cottage now that Otis is watching, Preston has no other choice, and remains silent as he observes the place through the windows. In the middle of the forest, Billy gathers in a camp with his companions Clerk and Ziegler, where they watch the area in search of the monster after reports of the attack suffered by the farmer. During the conversation, one of the men realizes that something seems to be watching them from the darkness, and Ziegler decides to go into the woods to find out what's going on. In the middle of the forest, the hunter follows the traces of the victims left by the creature, leading him to a large cave. Determined to find the threat, Ziegler enters the site alone, and during his exploration, he comes across human skeletons scattered across the floor. At that moment, the old man hears grunts coming from the back of the cave, and as he approaches, he is surprised by Karen, who begs him to rescue her from that place. Frightened, Ziegler says that he will call for help so that they can rescue the girl, but she screams in despair, saying that the creature could return at any moment. Before they can react, the pair are surprised by an attack from the monster, which drags Karen away and eliminates her in a few seconds. Soon after, Ziegler runs to alert his companions, and together they start firing at the trees, trying to hit the creature at any cost. However, the shots make no difference, and Billy is easily captured by the monster, which carries him away, eliminating him in the darkness. Thanks to this, Ziegler goes into shock and tries to hide behind one of the trees, but to no avail, and the old man ends up being attacked by the creature. Realizing that he will have no chance of escaping the place alive, Clerk begs the thing to let him go, saying that he will never tell the authorities anything about what happened. Despite begging, the man is unable to convince the monster, causing him to be eliminated on the spot. At the cottage, Preston desperately tries to find a way to alert the girls to Karen's disappearance, and uses his laptop to send an email to the victim's cell phone. With the noise of the device, the university students go outside, and noticing that their friend has not yet returned, they decide to walk around the area in search of the young woman. Desperate to warn them of the danger, Preston tries to open the window, but it is locked and he ends up injuring one of his fingers, preventing him from warning the girls. When they find Karen's cell phone, the university students find the message left by the climber and become extremely worried about their friend. Thanks to this, the girls start screaming for the girl, which attracts the attention of the abominable man, who watches them from the depths of the forest. Believing that Karen may be in danger, the girls decide to call the authorities, but as it's only been 20 minutes since their friend disappeared, the report is rejected by the police. Soon after, the trio realizes that Preston is spying on them from his window once again, and they return to the cabin so that they can stay safe, without even imagining that they were about to be attacked by the abominable man. Now that everyone is safe, the man waits until his carer falls asleep, and uses his laptop to research all the reports about the creature. In one of the documentaries, Dr. Bernard reveals that the creature that has appeared in rural areas doesn't resemble predators like bears, as its abilities are much more powerful. In addition, the researcher also explains that the monster should not be recognized as a Bigfoot, but rather as a kind of abominable snowman, since it is much larger and much crueler. At this point, Preston notices that the college girls have returned outside, and that Tracy is trying to convince her friends to go into the forest to find Karen. However, CJ says she won't risk walking through the forest, and after being scolded by her friend, she gets angry and throws her drink in the girls' direction. Due to the argument, the group returns inside once again, and as Tracy prepares to take her shower, Preston notices that the abominable is approaching the cabin. Believing that the girls are about to be attacked, the climber runs to Otis and orders him to come and see what is going on. When he arrives at the window, the caregiver sees no one but Tracy, and believing that his patient may be spying on the university students, the man begins to mock him. Annoyed, Preston gives up convincing his friend and continues looking for the abomination with his binoculars. At that moment, Tracy ends up being surprised by the monster, which uses its strength to capture her through the window, causing the victim's body to be folded in half as it is pulled out. After witnessing the scene, Preston panics and starts shouting for Otis to see what has happened, but the man doesn't believe him. Frightened, the man says that they should leave the place immediately, but is not taken seriously by the caregiver, who tells him that he should continue with his post-traumatic treatment. The problem is that Preston refuses to accept this, and begs Otis to take him back home, but this only makes him angrier and angrier, causing the man to push his patient away. Trying to get the climber to stop causing him so much trouble, the caretaker prepares one of the doses of tranquilizer, and says it's time for him to get some rest. However, as soon as Otis holds him down to put him back in his wheelchair, Preston seizes his chance and hits his caregiver in the neck with the syringe. In a few seconds, the caretaker falls to the ground unconscious, but before he can return to his investigation, the climber is surprised by the abominable creature, and the fright causes him to fall unconscious. Far away, Sheriff Halderman receives a report from his partner Cooper, who claims that climber Preston Rogers seems to have sent a distress call by email to the police station. The officer also says that he has tried to contact the man, but as he has had no response, he suggests that the department send a team to investigate the situation. When he hears this, Halderman says that they won't take any rash action, as Preston's location is too far from the city. In addition, the sheriff explains that the climber may have gone mad for good and started seeing things that aren't there, so there's no need to worry about him. During the conversation, One of the policemen asks if the situation could have any connection with the reports of the Flatwoods monster. Annoyed, Halderman says that creatures like this don't exist, and orders his subordinates to record the case so that they can contact Preston if he calls back. A few hours later, the climber wakes up on the floor of the hut, and after sitting in his wheelchair, he observes the scene to make sure that none of the young women have been attacked by the abominable creature. Soon after, Preston goes to one of the cupboards, where he finds some tools to use as an improvised weapon. Before he could return to the window, the man discovers that he has received a reply from the police, who warn him that he will be arrested if he continues to send false emails to the police station. In the cabin next door, the group of college girls begins to wonder why Tracy is taking so long to get out of the shower, and CJ decides to check the bathroom from the outside. As she does so, the young woman comes across the window smeared with the remains of her friend, causing them to despair, drawing the attention of Preston, who rushes over to check what's going on. Terrified, the girls plan to hide on the second floor while trying to call the authorities, without even imagining that they are being watched by the abominable man. In order to prevent the survivors from being attacked, Preston smashes the window with a decorative object, attracting the attention of the creature, which looks in his direction. However, this doesn't work out as expected, and the abominable creature starts walking around the house. Then Preston realizes that the animal is being attracted by the loud sound of the girl's radio. The man quickly runs to his laptop and sends a message to Karen's cell phone, ordering the girls to turn off the music as soon as possible. The climber then goes to the window and starts talking to the girls, saying that he saw one of them being captured by the abominable man. Soon after, Preston asks them to call the police, but Amanda says they have no signal, and during the conversation, the creature destroys the door, allowing it to enter the cabin. Desperate, the man shouts for the girls to hide immediately, causing them all to run in terror. The problem is that even after hiding in one of the rooms, Michelle can't keep calm, and thanks to this, she ends up being found by the creature, which attacks her through the floor. Now that he has captured one of his victims, the abomination begins to devour the girl, whose neck is completely destroyed by the monster's fangs. Seconds later, Preston notices that Amanda is walking through the living room, and before she can run away, she comes across the creature, which appears after it has finished devouring its victim. As much as she tries to hide behind the furniture, the young woman is surprised by CJ, who starts screaming in fear, causing both of them to be detected by the abominable man. As a result, Amanda ends up being thrown out of the window and falls to the ground in a daze. CJ then runs towards her car, but the escape attempt fails miserably, and after overturning the vehicle with his bare hands, the monster charges at his victim. Even after being attacked, CJ uses her pepper spray to attack the creature, but even though he has been stunned, the abominable does not give up, and stomps on the young woman's body with all his might. Realizing that her friend has just been eliminated by the creature, Amanda starts running desperately, and Preston shouts for her to come to his hut. Quickly, the young woman rushes there, and after locking the door, the climber uses his binoculars to look for the abominable creature, but he discovers that it is no longer there. Now that they are safe for a while, the man tries to calm Amanda down, and says that they will find a way to escape from that place. After they calm down, Preston decides to tell the girl about the story of his accident, and says that he can't let all his trauma be in vain. So, the climber says that they will devise a strategy to defeat the creature, because only then will they be able to get out of that hut alive. A few minutes later, Preston grabs some climbing equipment that he used to keep in the lockers, and asks Amanda to take care of his axe, since they'll need it to protect themselves. While he prepares the bait and wires for the ambush, the man asks the girl to try to contact the police one more time and ask them to come as soon as possible. Without wasting any time, Amanda rushed over to Preston's computer, but before she could send the email, the power started to fail. After meeting up, the young woman asks what's going on, and the man replies that the creature may have cut the electrical wires. Realizing that they will have to change their strategy, Preston orders Amanda to get the climbing equipment, and as she does so, the girl realizes that the abominable man is standing in front of the entrance door. The man quickly retrieves the keys to the balcony from Otis's pockets, and together they begin to prepare the safety belts to descend from the second floor on the outside. To get the man down, Amanda helps him hang onto the cables, allowing him to reach the ground safe and sound. However, before she could escape, the young woman began to be pulled back up by the creature, which managed to bring her back to the balcony with ease. Just as he was about to devour another of his prey, the abominable man is surprised by Otis, who attacks his enemy with a powerful blow from Preston's axe. Thanks to this, the creature ends up freeing Amanda, but before he can react, the caretaker is grabbed and eliminated by the abominable creature, which uses its fangs to split his head in half. Soon afterwards, the abominable man starts pulling on the climbing ropes again, and Preston shouts for the university student to let go of her hook immediately, allowing her to free herself. Now that they're on the ground, Amanda drags the climber to her vehicle, where they prepare to finally escape the place. At that moment, the creature grabs the car from behind and uses its strength to lift it off the ground, leaving the survivors desperate. Despite this, Amanda manages to accelerate the vehicle, but thanks to her desperation, the pair end up crashing into one of the trees in the forest, causing the young woman to be thrown through the windscreen. Seconds later, Preston wakes up inside the car, and noticing that the abominable man is approaching the girl's body, he uses the horn to get his attention. Thanks to this, the man discovers that the high sound frequencies of the vehicle can scare the thing, which begins to back away in fright. However, this strategy doesn't work for long, and realizing that he is about to be attacked, Preston throws the vehicle into reverse, causing it to run over the creature, which is pressed against one of the trees. Noticing that the beast is unable to free itself, the survivor begins to crawl towards Amanda, and at the same time, the abomination ends up not resisting with all the wounds that have been inflicted on its body. Realizing that Amanda is still alive, Preston is relieved and says that the creature has been destroyed, so they can finally leave that terrible place. While walking along the road, the pair are found by one of the police officers from the station, who reveals that he decided to check out what was going on after receiving the distress email. Preston then states that the agent should call in the cavalry as soon as possible, as the monster's attack resulted in many losses, and the bodies of the 5 victims are scattered around the huts. A few minutes later, the authorities and medical teams arrived at the scene, and after being helped by paramedics, Amanda thanked her partner for all the help she had received. At the same time, the sheriff of Flatwoods meets with the other police officers, and now that they have managed to ensure the safety of the survivors, he says it's time for them to investigate the entire region. In order to understand what kind of creatures are living there, the agents spread out to analyze each area of the forest, and Halderman is disgusted by the fearful behavior of his team. The old man says that there is nothing there but common animals, but at that moment, the group begins to hear noises coming from the trees, and they point their flashlights in the direction of the darkness. As they do so, the policemen come across dozens of glowing eyes watching them from among the trees, and realize that from now on, the town of Flatwoods will have to face a gigantic horde of abominable snowmen. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.